Over the course of the past 2 weeks, two of the most shocking firings in NBA history have occurred. The winningest coach in the history of the Denver Nuggets and the Memphis Grizzlies have just been fired. And these have come as a huge surprise as the postseason is just around the corner. Taylor Jenkins was the head coach for the Memphis Grizzlies from 2019 to 2025, leading them to 3 playoff appearances and an appearance in the second round. In this second round of the playoffs, they were defeated by the Golden State Warriors in 6 games. However, Taylor Jenkins is credited with Ja Morant's breakout season and the rest of the young core developing into stars. Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and others have become key contributors to Memphis Grizzlies, and going into the All-Star break this year, the Grizzlies were looking really good as they held the number 2 seed in a very competitive Western Conference. Unfortunately, the Grizzlies disappointed coming out of the All-Star break, going 8-11 before Taylor Jenkins was fired on March 28th. Still, this came as a massive surprise, as 3 days ago they had just blown out the Utah Jazz by 37 points and had only lost to the top team in the league, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Furthermore, the Grizzlies were still in the number 4 seed and were going to make the postseason no matter what. And we're going to get into some of the reasons why Taylor Jenkins was fired later. Let's talk about Michael Malone first, because I think that there's a theme here in all of these head coach firings. Michael Malone was the head coach of the Denver Nuggets from 2015 to 2025, with an NBA championship in 2023, just 2 years ago. But Michael Malone has been stated on many occasions to be a hothead and has been unable to control himself in many situations. Earlier this season, Michael Malone spoke out against the Sacramento Kings, firing head coach Mike Brown after he was the coach of the year just 2 seasons ago. He talked about the Kings having, quote, no class, and how the league just switches coaches like they're nothing. And this is the mindset that has led to the firing of both Taylor Jenkins and Michael Malone. Now, I talked about how Michael Malone could have difficulty controlling his emotions. This could lead to possibly the locker room disrespecting him and not seeing him as a true leader. When he was fired, the Nuggets were on a 4-game losing streak. That losing streak is affecting them right now, as they might fall into the play-in tournament if they can't rack up a few wins to end the season. Now let's tie that back to Coach Jenkins. Earlier this season, in a game against the Houston Rockets, Coach Jenkins went off against the referees. It was justified as the referees had given him a timeout when he had not called one, and they were down by 1 point in the waning seconds of a game while one of the Grizzlies were on a fast break. However, his lack of control showed what might have been happening behind closed doors. As the same for Michael Malone. Without Jokic's okay in the situation, there's no way Michael Malone would have been fired. But certainly, Jokic was also unhappy with the team's situation and wanted a change in leadership. There was probably tension between Michael Malone and Nikola Jokic, and of course the team would side with Jokic. Jokic might legitimately be having the greatest offensive season of all time. When you look at his stats, it's unheard of. He's averaging a triple-double with nearly 30 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists a game. Without Jokic, the Denver Nuggets might be legitimately one of the worst teams in the league. Without Michael Malone, they might not even be any worse. If you look at this Nuggets team without Jokic and compare him to the Washington Wizards, are they really that much better? Is the starting five of Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Russell Westbrook really that much better than the Wizards starting five? Jokic needs to be appeased. And this brings us to the Grizzlies. Ja Morant's situation is certainly different. Ja Morant doesn't hold nearly as much value as Nikola Jokic does, but Ja Morant is still the franchise player of the Memphis Grizzlies. But here we see a motive that might be different to Jokic's. Jokic, although he doesn't show it a lot of the times, does want to win. And he was probably clashing with Michael Malone's scheme. But Ja Morant might have thought that Taylor Jenkins was too strict. Right after Taylor Jenkins got fired, in his very next game, Ja Morant made gestures. And these gestures are a huge issue for the Memphis Grizzlies, as Ja Morant's been suspended on multiple occasions for showing a firearm on Instagram Live. After the Warriors game, and despite receiving a warning from the NBA, he continued to make these gestures in the very next game. And Ja Morant's doing this just out of defiance at this point. And of course, Tuomas Lisalo's not going to be able to do anything to him, as there's only a few games left in the regular season, and the Memphis Grizzlies need Ja Morant to perform in the playoffs if they want to make any sort of a run, even just making it to the second round, or even making their first round result look respectable. Ultimately, we're going to see how the Grizzlies and the Nuggets do in the postseason, but only 2 teams in NBA history have fired their head coach mid-season and then won the NBA championship, and I would argue that these are very different situations. In both cases, the team already had a head coach lined up and probably just wanted to hire them anyways. In these cases are the 06 Heat, who replaced Dan Van Gundy with Pat Riley, and the 2016 2019 Cavaliers, who replaced David Blatt with Tyronn Lue. We have no idea what Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets or John Morant and the Grizzlies can do in the postseason, but I don't think either team is going to go very far. Mid-season head coaching changes almost never work out, and this is probably going to be no exception. In both of the aforementioned cases where the team ended up winning the championship, the head coach was fired in December, not 2 weeks before the end of the regular season. Still, we have no idea when something's first going to happen. So if you're a Grizzlies or Nuggets fan, don't lose out on all hope yet. We're setting up for an insane postseason, especially in the West, and by the time this video is out, the regular season is going to be over. Right now, the final few playoff spots are being fought for by the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Grizzlies, the Warriors, and the Timberwolves in that order. It's going to be a great final few games of the regular season, and I'm sure it's going to be one of the best postseasons of all time.
Alexander Walker's on the ball. Jokic has got it. Edwards has got Jokic. Jokic in for the tie. Timeout, Minnesota.